Hey, that's not rubbish.
Hey guys, I am Lexi, and this is That's Not Rubbish, the podcast where we talk to cool people who turn garbage into cool things. And today we are at the dinner table with Melanie Wong, the upcycler behind Meadowland, transforming tablecloths, table runners, linens, and all that into the most beautiful feminine slips and such. So, hey Mel,
Hello.
I love your stuff, Mel. I think your dainty, ethereal pieces are perfect for spring, summer. I think it's very reflective of our generation's taste, I feel like, or at least a crowd of. And yeah, while we're chatting on the phone, you revealed your love for costume design and Craigslist, two things that I would simply love to learn more about, and your experience in the luxury fashion world. So you're a really interesting person. We have lots to talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I know we have a lot to talk about, but I just woke up, and this is also, you're the first person I've spoken to in the day, and it's kind of a lot for it to be a podcast. Like, it's not even a regular conversation.
Fair enough. It is. It's like a whole interview. Good morning, Mel.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
Joe. Yeah. We'll ease you up into it. We'll ease you up. So first up, we'll do some good news to cure the eco doomies. Let me tell you guys a little something about the Runway Fashion Design Challenge. In Terapaca, Chile, a group of artisans and designers are working in pairs to transform textile waste into new fashion collections. So, in just 3 months, they have rescued over 242 kilos of garments from the textile dump. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I love shows like that. I think there was a show in New York recently with By Live and Art to Wear and had like performance and a huge runway show. I've never participated in anything like that, but I love to see it.
One day, Mel. I don't know if it's actually like a show. I know you're thinking like Project Runway vibes, but it's not. I don't think it's an actual show. They will have a fashion show, but this would make a sweet show, like an upcycling show.
That would be awesome. When you said Project Runaway, I'm like, that's a Project Runaway I would see. There's a lot of like variations and spin-offs of that show now that I've seen, but I'm not as interested in it.
Yeah, low key, Project Runway is like the ultimate. I guess they kind of set the blueprint for upcycling in a way before they even knew it. Yeah,
Oh, I never thought of it that way.
yeah. I remember they would do like episodes where they like upcycled car materials. They
The
would have to make stuff out
candy,
of like
yeah.
candy wrappers. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So shout out Heidi Klum for the queen of upcycling.
Sure. I guess so.
But anyways, the Runway Fashion Design Challenge was started by Joanna Fernandez with the aim of, and I quote, the importance of creating programs that promote slow fashion, conscious consumption, and the education and visibility of those brands that compete in the fashion industry with little success compared to those that occupy almost 90% of the market and are globally recognized. So, kind of referring to the gap between slow and fast fashion. We do need more people on our team. So, thank you, Joanna, for kickstarting this initiative and fashionunited.com for the article. I will link it in the
Oh
description.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is especially amazing because Chile is essentially the world's textile dump. So if you didn't know, the Atacama Desert in Chile, which is like the north part, it has the biggest clothing dump in the world. Like, you can see it from space. Yeah, and I'm not talking like a little speck from space. I'm talking you can see it from space. Yeah, I could kiss Joanna right now, truly. Moving on to the fun stuff. Are you awake, Mel?
I'm trying to be.
Well, good, because in my mind, just so you guys know, the vibes of this episode and this conversation are very much so Alice in Wonderland at the funky, campy tea party and like a fantasy ethereal land, you know? That's what your pieces give.
I don't know if I give that, but I'm glad my pieces give that.
Imposter syndrome, first thing in the morning. I'm so sorry. No, but I'm excited to talk and just to step inside your world, even if it is for just 15 minutes, I'll take it. And as I said, your expertise includes upcycling linens, tablecloths, table runners into magical little pieces. But why don't you describe what you do in your own words? Since that
Yeah.
could be a good exercise to start.
I mean, I think with like doilies and tablecloths and a lot of like hand embroidered pieces, it really emphasizes how much more time and dedication people put into textile work and just making things for themselves and just having the skill of making in general at home and making it a normalized skill to have. And I think all of that, there's so many of those things that exist in the world already. I don't see why we can't put those things on a pedestal and kind of highlight it in our clothes today. I think those things get lost. Like everyone's like, yeah, my grandma had like a million crocheted blankets or like all these tatted doilies, and they get tossed away into like thrift stores all the time. And I always see like mounds and mounds of this kind of stuff. And there's just so many hours that go into it, and so many people don't have the skill anymore. And like I feel like in many ways I'm being disrespectful by using these pieces and not knowing how to make them myself. Like one of my goals is to learn tatting because tatting is such a lost art, and that's how they make so many like edges for linens and make doilies. It's different from crochet, but it's similar. Not many people know about it because it's kind of a lost art. It's like making lace too.
Yeah, that's so true. And yeah, it's so true. And I wonder why I do feel like as a whole, our generation and our societies slowly kind of lost detail. Like when you look around, even just architecture, like those old, gorgeous buildings in Europe have like all the statues and like all like the details. And so you could look at them, you're like, how did someone spend so much time on this? Or even just the textiles they have, like the lace and every delicate, intricate little detail or hole or cutting or trimming. But now I feel like we kind of, with technology, we kind of have like computer generated images that we kind of depend on textures and abstract graphics to cover up the detail. So it's true. I think it's nice that you appreciate and cherish those and are bringing them back and modernizing them because they're very evident in your pieces, like the lace and all those intricate design features. So I'm with it, Mel. I like
I
it.
appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
totally appreciate your comment on like the European buildings too, because
yeah.
those buildings kind of like encourage more engagement. You know, like when you go and you visit a European city and you're surrounded by these old buildings, you are encouraged to go closer to those buildings because as you get closer and you interact with it, you're more rewarded by the details that kind of keep revealing themselves. Whereas I feel like a lot of like modern architecture values having like this giant building that can be viewed from, I don't know, like it's giant like abstract building that you can see from like miles away and kind of like have this giant sculpture in the middle of nowhere that when you get closer it doesn't feel welcoming, doesn't feel warm, and you're not rewarded by the textures and designs that you can see by interacting with it. um yeah, and I think like those European cities also, those kinds of buildings, when you encourage people to walk more and you encourage people to like look more closely, it kind of like serves the function of what buildings should be more. I'm getting into slight tangent, but I'm super into this idea. And I think with
Yeah,
like,
you got my mind spiraling too. Like even just like like where do I even begin to say what I'm trying to say? Yeah, I feel like it is society's perception or philosophy towards the things that we have as a whole. Like back in the day, they valued the word value stuck with me. They valued the little things, the detail, the simple things in life. Like even if you're going to the library, which is chill, you're just going to read a book, it's a gorgeous ornamental library. Even if you're just going to go to church, which is supposed to not be a very materialistic place, they made it beautiful and ornamental so that you can, cherish the experience. But I feel like now we are just kind of pumping things out to make them accessible, like easy, fast, go, go, go. And there's just no room for those details anymore. So I think it's almost what would we
yeah,
prefer?
yeah, because I definitely don't have the skills to make the lace and tatting, but I can pull it and recontextualize it so you can see it. But I'm not the one doing all that handiwork because it's already out there.
Yeah, why waste the time? We can still appreciate what people in the past have made. It's better than letting it go completely. I can respect that. And I'm extra excited to dig deeper into how you developed your own brand and style. Before we do that, please share with our listeners what you do when you're not upcycling, because I think it's probably one of the most fascinating
Yeah,
job titles I've ever heard in my whole life.
thank you. I'm the wardrobe supervisor for a Star Wars burlesque show called The Empire Strips Back. Yeah, and I'm on tour with them now, so
You're
not near my home. I'm on tour right now, so I'm in Denver, but I'm normally based in New York.
oh, gorgeous. Really cool. Yeah, they just don't post these kind of jobs on LinkedIn anymore, do they? But
No?
no, no. But being the stylist costume designer for a Star Wars burlesque show is super relevant to upcycling. It's got the sewing fashion sector in it. Tell us a bit more about this role. Like, how do your worlds collide? How do they inspire each other? Spill.
I think the reason why I work in costumes now is so that I can still work with my hands. So I worked in fashion for a very, very brief amount of time before I realized that that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, with fashion, a lot of it, especially in fashion design, you're working behind a laptop and you lose a lot of I felt my maker skills just kind of deteriorating while I was there in office, just always on Photoshop, just drawing and like receiving samples from factories, but never having a true hand in making any of those samples. So there was a point in which I was like, maybe I want to work at like a development studio or a factory so I can keep these making skills.
Yeah.
But those were a little bit too intense. Those hours were still intense because they were still in the fashion industry. So the speed at which they had to make things to keep up with a lot of the bigger brands was just unsustainable and stressful and not worth it to me.
Stressful, yeah.
And also, factories are in the middle of nowhere, and I did not want to live in the middle of nowhere. um, so that's kind of why I moved into costumes because it's just the scale at which you work is so much smaller. You think of it by production, you don't think you're trying to sell, garments to the entire world or whatever it is. And I really liked being able to make things for other people. I also learned that when I designed at the luxury brand that I worked at, I wasn't truly designing because I just had started there. So I was a junior. I felt like my boss was just telling me what to do with my pencil. Like I was just saying, that's cute, even though I did not think things were cute because like I just wanted the interaction to either be over or for them to think that they're right so that that could be over. And I really felt like I wasn't a designer, even though my title was a designer. And that in itself made me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I decided, like, hey, if I actually want to design, I'm actually going to have my own brand on the side, figure out how all that stuff gets done in myself.
Fair enough. That makes sense. And it is frustrating when you want to see something come to life so bad that you're gonna have to be the only one to do it, right? Yeah. No, that's definitely fair. It's the creative spirit. So you've worked in the luxury fashion world and costume design. You're obviously a seasoned thespian in the fashion world as an art. So yeah, you're no joke by the sounds of your resume. But one your resume is crazy. I would love to see it. But one thing at a time, how has the costume world been treating you? The costume design world, I mean.
Costume's been pretty cool. I mean, I'm not too seasoned in either industry. So if I go into costumes, I'm very green. But if I go into fashion, I'm also very green. Like
Okay.
in general, I feel like my life is seasoned enough, but in individual industries, then no. But thank you for that. Um, but with costumes, I mean, everyone has clothes on stage, so I feel like that's fine.
Yeah. No, you're doing
But keep
something.
standards low. Yeah. People have clothes on stage. So that's always an accomplishment, but also it's a strip show. So people also don't have clothes on stage.
That's true. Like, are you doing
So
your
my
job
job in
right?
that sense is like, yeah. So my job isn't super hard, in that regard.
It can get confusing. Do you want clothes or not? When do you want them to come off? Yeah. No, that's so fair. And I have so many questions because it's not something that gets talked about every day. And it seems like a blast, like a truly dream niche job. And we are at the TNR dinner table, so what better time to talk about costume design? Um, so I guess this wasn't really where you expected to end up was costume design. So you were not a theater kid, I take.
Definitely not a theater kid. And I'm reminded of that pretty often working in theater
You're very
because
clicky,
what the
yeah.
stereotype, the stereotype of a theater kid, like they sing all the time, they make the musical references. And
Yeah.
I just don't get references in general. Like being in the Star Wars show is already difficult because it is so niche. So like when audience members like want to compliment people or talk to cast, a lot of us aren't Star Wars fans. Like most of the dancers are not Star Wars fans.
I would say I feel like the Star Wars and the theater kids they're not the same.
These aren't really theater kids either. These are in this show, they're all dancers. So they're very different than theater kids too.
They're like in a fifth dimension. Yeah. That's cool though.
Yeah, I
Do
mean, I like working for the company though, because even though I'm not really a Star Wars fan, I just saw it before my interview just to know the baseline of what was happening. I
I,
wouldn't be lost. I like it because it's just morally right. It's just morally just. Let's put it this way, because I think it's pretty straightforward. Like I put clothes that are fun on dancers, and then they do a little dance on stage, and people are happy, and that's it. And I think with fashion, there are so many layers to that. There's like it was first of all, like it wasn't just me in my department. There's so many people in my design office, and then there was like the factory people, then the people who develop things, and so many people that are hidden behind all the screens. And that's the big reason why fashion can't be sustainable for many companies, is because there's so many walls between every layer of production that we don't see what is the truth that's going on. So even as a designer, you don't see the reality of your little drawings being sent out to other countries and people working in factories and suffering to get your pieces made. Whereas like in the Star Wars show, I'm the only one there. So what can be more transparent than that? I'm doing everything. And I don't feel like I have evil bosses over me or people that work for this company like ghosts working in certain ways. And like I know every single person in this company. I know what they do. I know what our mission is, and it's happening. It's straightforward, and nothing is being hidden, and nothing is malicious or evil. If anything, dancers are really tired and they're overworked. But I see that that's in front of me, and that's sort of a part of doing a full-time dance job. So
Yeah, it's rewarding. It's definitely fulfilling and I guess responsible. Like you feel like it's guilt free. It's a
yeah,
guilt free job.
exactly. I
Yeah.
feel like it's a guilt-free job, and I think before when I worked for like a big company, it was not guilt-free ever.
Okay, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. It sounds like I was gonna ask how you got introduced to the world of costume design, but it sounds like you were kind of gravitated towards it because you were so kind of bothered by your other job in the retail fashion industry. So, what are the main differences, I guess, between the costume design industry and the fashion industry as a whole?
I mean, in terms of like waste management with fashion, there's so much waste, like even just in the office, just even in the day to day and how people see things because of the speed at which things needed to be made. It didn't, things like waste, like wasn't top of mind. It was just to keep going as quickly as possible. And you could tell from like the very small things by like office behavior, like the speed at which we were throwing away like swatches and fabrics and just supplies at all times. And we had to burn everything because no one was allowed to see anything.
Fair enough, but it
And
paints such an eerie picture, doesn't
yeah.
it? Like all these like designer bags getting taken by a guy in like a plague mask, and he's going to like the slaughterhouse out back and putting gasoline on this pile of Birkins and just lighting it up. Like, is that what it looks like? Like, are you allowed to tell
I
us?
mean, I don't know about like the actual prototypes, what happened. It was a lot of like small, like as I worked in knitwear, so there's a lot of swatches that were had to be thrown away, and mostly like sketches. It was mostly sketches that were being lost. But in terms of like other stuff, I don't know what they do with it. And that's the problem. The company's so big that I can't know. I can't possibly know what happens. And with costumes, like the team and everything is so small that the waste management technically is handled by me. Like I can choose whether or not I want to salvage materials or bring them with me. And it's kind of hard too because working with a lot of stuff is messy. And I
Yeah.
learned a lot of upcyclers are hoarders. We're a hoarding breed of people.
Yeah, 100%. Because yeah, you're definitely turned away by the fashion world as like the waste management, and you get to have a more hands-on experience in costume design. But as a creative, I'm wondering if maybe you like to design more for art or I guess to sell, because I guess that is the different missions your two
Mhm.
worlds are aiming for.
I mean, I try, yeah, for sure. I think with Meadowland, I try my best to think of it as am I making this for art or am I making this to see it on people? I think it's a little difficult for myself as an artist slash business person to say, am I making it to sell? Because
Right.
then it hurts me. Then it makes me feel bad about
Yeah.
myself. But also, my prerogative in all of this is to see art on the street and to see things that are creative on the street and see it on people.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a whole space dedicated to people who want to upcycle or make garments that are for museums and are meant to be noticed and meant to be thought about and meant to inspire thoughts of slow creation and slow fashion upcycling. But then there's also another world in which you could actually put it into practice. And I think with fashion as a design discipline should place function over form. That's just I'm a function over form person.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much space for form to work well in conjunction with function, with fashion at least. And I want people to see themselves in these clothes. I don't want them to think it's just an idea or something that they would see on stage or anything like that.
Beautifully said. Really beautifully said. Because I think that is kind of the way that they can all cross paths to create fashion. I feel like take a shot every time I said fashion because I've said it so many times. But yeah, I feel like there are so many different functions and genres to the fashion industry, like costume design and fast fashion, where their aim is to literally just sell stuff. And then you know what upcyclers are doing, where you want to create something beautiful that people like and that they can wear and that resonates with you as the creative and the designer, but you also want it to sell in the sense that you have people to like it and to wear it, and then not to just look at it and be like, oh, that's pretty, next, you know. So you do want all these different incentives to cross paths. Well, are there any final comments on the sectors between upcycling, costume design, and the fashion industry? Any words of wisdom for those attempting to enter or leave either?
Yeah, I mean, I think for upcycling at least, especially if you're a fashion design student, is to have the audacity to do it. And I think that more applies probably to my school. So I went to FIT than it probably does to other schools. Maybe it's just I have a limited scope on what fashion design students think of this kind of work. But from my experience, at least in New York City, and in New York City is full of the city of dreamers, as they say, and like a bunch of people who have the audacity to do things. So maybe I'm speaking from a really specific point of view, but from what I've seen in upcyclers in New York, a lot of the brands are actually visual artists or fine arts backgrounds people and less fashion design people. And I think a part of it is because when you come from a fine arts or an arts background, you feel more comfortable in switching into other mediums, or you feel comfortable switching into fashion as like just a different medium of your art. But I might be wrong in this, and I think, and it could be parts to that, but I think in a more umbrella way of looking at it, in a way that I can fully stand by, is that when you don't come from the background in which you're working in now, you're more flexible and you're more comfortable with trying something new, and you're okay with being wrong because you know you're wrong in general. Like this isn't your industry, so you're like, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to go for it. And I think that spirit is lacking in people who do formal education and things. So in this case, in fashion design, when you went to my school, FIT, it's a very technical school. So in your way of thinking and the way you've been trained to think is that like you don't do it unless it's perfect. And I think in upcycling, there's so much imperfection, and that's what makes it so cool. And I think that's why I really like upcycling so much, is because it's helped me get out of the way I was trained and get out of that thinking of like, I need to start with the sketch, I need to start with the prototype, I need to do a muslin, and then I need to do it in final fabric. Because all of that is really stressful and in many ways kind of stunts the creative process. Yeah. And I think upcycling, especially with draping in store, which is what I like to call it, like finding pieces in the store and trying to piece them together to try to see what I would make out of it. And this comes from my Marie Kondo way of thinking of like, if I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it, I don't want to take it home. Yeah. But I think draping in store and kind of conceptualizing in that space and being able to know that like I'm actually going to sew it exactly like this and it'll be one and done is something that you're not like allowed to do in fashion school, at least in my fashion school. And it's very different from a lot of the top schools. And FIT, in the way that I was trained, you had to do all those steps in order to make a garment, and it kind of like distracts you, I think, from all the creative opportunities that you could have had from doing things that are one-off. But with this kind of work that I do, like I get to go back to that initial passion, which I think is a lot of how kids and a lot of how people, or not kids, or teenagers, whoever start, whatever age you start making clothes, when you start draping, that's the joy of it, is that you drape it, you pin it, and then you sew it into place, and you're like, it's beautiful like that. And then the reality is that you can't produce it. But like in this world of upcycling, you can dance in that kind of like fantasy of like, I'm going to make it and it's going to be done forever. And it's also a practice of like letting go, like making things and letting go is like very hard, but you can make these really beautiful, moments in life, I guess, I don't know, in the broadest way, and let it go. And that's really nice too. And there's a space for that, even if it's not profitable or factory manufacturable.
No, 100%. Yeah, it definitely sounds like, like upcycling is for everybody. It can be an outlet for everybody, but especially the fashion students or those that do have a role in the fashion industry that don't get to play how they want to because there are no rules in upcycling. It's still very new, it's very individual. You can do whatever you want, you can invent stuff, play, trim it, cut it, bop it, twist it, you know?
Yeah.
No, really, really well said. I think anybody can resonate with that message. I don't think it was too specific by any means. You know, say it again louder for the people in the back. But moving on, I would really like to hear more about you, like your personal philosophy, your creation process, your inspiration. So tell us a bit more about your personal philosophy regarding designing garments as an art to wear with your pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to what I had said before about having the confidence and comfort to play with fashion as a medium, as more of an artistic medium,
Yeah, right.
and not trying to follow that strict method of production of because it really closes so many doors along the way.
Right.
And when you're upcycling, you kind of like work as you design. And I think that process is really fulfilling to me. And it feels like kind of like an expressionist painting rather than like a painting where you know, draw on pencil and then I don't know how painters work. You do the base tones or whatever, the background and the subject or whatever. Like getting rid of those steps and kind of doing everything at once is a really like fulfilling feeling to have. Yeah, it's just so much more emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more definitely more emotional. So how would you describe your pieces then, like aesthetically?
I like to think that my work is like a royal kitsch for children, or like I don't know, maybe not for children, but like it's reminiscent of childhood. And I think the reason why I like to put those words together is because they are really fancy, but they're not fancy in an adult and unattainable way. They're fancy in a really dreamlike way.
Yeah.
They're the kind of things that you kind of want to attain as a child, and kind of putting those two things. Like maybe it's like the nicest, at least for the blankets things and things with more the linens and the cottons, they kind of just feel like the nicest dress that your mom could have made you. They kind of like have put those feelings together that I really like. They're like it's a royalty for scrappy people. I think New York is a really scrappy city for people who haven't been there. They think New York City is like super rich and like whatever, and it is in certain parts, but it's also like a really dirty and scrappy city. And I think
Wow.
there's a level of yeah, there's a level of fancy and scrappy put together in my work that I feel like at least that's how I would wear it or how I would style it. Some people are able to make it look really nice and pretty when they wear it, but I don't know. I still feel like I'm a little rat that wears
Scrappy.
it. Yeah.
So definitely, I totally agree. Using all of things tableware and linen, of course. What drew you to these materials then?
They're cute. I don't know. They're super cute. I think a lot of people who are in this sort of now as a really prominent like the girlhood aesthetic. I think a lot of us came from Rookie as teenagers. I don't know if you're familiar with Tavi Gevenson and Rookie magazine, Petra Collins, maybe the photographer Petra Collins. She's super famous, but I think they're like the originators of the soft pastel, idealized suburban dream girlhood aesthetic. If that makes any sense. If you can get the picture I'm getting, if not their
I
names.
get the picture. I get the picture. No, I think they mesh
Yeah.
materials and your designs work perfectly together. Yeah.
I would say they're like the mothers of that aesthetic from like way back in, I don't know, 10, I would say around 10 years ago.
Mother.
They started like a, yeah.
So, can you tell us a bit on where you find your inspiration? I want to be in your brain, quite literally.
um, I don't know. I don't, it's from everything. I think I don't really follow fashion too well. I'm not really good with media in general. I feel like I get a lot of my inspiration just from going to flea markets, vintage markets, patterns, anything old, but in person. I don't have a really organized system of collecting inspiration yet, which I want to have. Like I have a million photos on my phone. They're not organized in any sort of way. But yeah, just going out in person, looking at old things.
Okay, so given what you just said, I have a fun question. You're not so into media, but you do have those like founding mothers that inspired you. So I guess if you could style
Yeah.
any celebrity in your pieces, who would it be?
I don't know if I have one in particular right now, but I can think of one that was recent.
Okay.
But she's not my icon for my work, but she's just someone that comes to mind because it was a recent-ish idea.
Okay.
Rebecca Black. Rebecca Black. And
She's the last
don't
person that I
think-
thought you were going to say.
this is the last person I thought, but she's also the last in the sense, like the most recent person I thought of, but it's not like, okay, my dream is to style this person. It's just like an idea came into my head. That's all.
It's Friday. Friday. I know.
Yeah, she's doing stuff. I don't know what she's doing. So like also shame on me because this is my answer, but I was like, no idea what she's doing. But I know that her stylist is putting her in like Mila Sullivan. I think it's Mia or Mia.
Yeah, Mila Sullivan.
And she also, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. She's putting her in things like Mila Sullivan and a lot of like indie designers and upcyclers. And I'm like, I didn't know Rebecca Black was a slow fashion icon.
Hello,
So-
Rebecca.
So that's the only reason why. Because I also think it'd be funny. Like I choose, my philosophy is to choose things that are funny to do. You know, like maybe Rebecca Black makes really good music and it's not funny and I don't know any of these things, but her story lives on. Unfortunately, her past
Iconic.
lives on today. So
100%. It's upcycled. that could be
Yeah.
great. No, she has done a rebrand. I think she's a good girl. She's cool. So I could see it. Why not? It's a fun, twisted, ethereal fantasy land. So I'll take it. It fits with the brand. But I mean, alongside the lace camis, the slips, I am noticing some Barbie reworks, you know, some blanket jackets and such. Ooh, and the watch chokers. I love those. So
Thank
tell us a
you.
bit about those pieces. Yeah, where did those come from, Mel?
Yeah, the tapestry blankets, there are a decent number of brands that do tapestry reworks. I think it was almost hard for me to start it at first. Like there's so many brands that are doing this. Like why should I also do it?
Yeah.
But I quickly realized that a lot of the tapestry pieces weren't made that well. So that kind of piece, the weave is so loose. Like you can see the yarns, you can see the weave in a tapestry blanket. So you know that when you cut it, it unravels pretty easily. Like it's very hard to finish those edges.
Yeah.
So when you get like a jacket or a sweater by a rework brand, it's generally serged but it's never finished more than that. And that's not strong enough for that kind of material. So I was like, I'm gonna make something that's a lot higher quality in this. And I think that's where the whole artist versus technical fashion designer, I guess, comes into play. I don't want to say fashion designer because like I'm speaking very specifically to how I was trained at my school. But yeah, that's why it encouraged me to make these jackets that were like fully lined and like serged and then stitched on top of it and then glued and like make sure like everything has to be made to a really like high standard for my jackets. And that's why it's been hard to sell compared to like other brands that make them.
I respect that.
They're like fused and they're tailored and they have shoulder pads and all these things. And that's really important for me when I make these jackets.
Shoulder pads,
But I kind
Spoil
of
us.
they have shoulder pads. Yeah, they look because I think like blanket jackets generally or like blanket sweaters, they look floppy. They look like Snuggies, quite frankly. Like they look rough. I think theoretically they're very cool, but they're looking a little too floppy. So I was like, I want this to look stiff and tailored. So that's what encouraged me to make it. I'm like, well, I can make the same thing that I don't need to reinvent it, but I can make it better. So that was the kind of the idea for the blanket jackets. And those are sort of like my reach products, like the things that people like look at, try on, and never buy. But like but then people remember me for because they're very expensive, and they're like, well, when will I actually wear this? I'm like, I don't know. And
Girl, yeah.
that's sort of my So that's sort of like the pieces that I have that are like the top range of things, and then the slips are sort of what keeps the machine going.
Well, it's nice to have a variety. It definitely is. And it's fun to see the different aesthetics live together in your brand, you know, because it's kind of like I actually am seeing different parts of your brain, you know, like the different areas where they live. But oh my God, wait, we have yet to discuss your love for Craigslist. Where does all this come? Where does Craigslist come
I
into
do
all
love
this?
it. I think it's related. I think it is related though. You asked me earlier about like what my philosophy is, and it's just like to do things that I think are fun.
Craigslist.
But I think Craigslist. Okay, I'm obsessed with Craigslist, but that's because I live in New York City. I don't think I'd be obsessed with Craigslist if I lived in a different city. So when I go to other cities, I always have this idea that I should check Craigslist to see what's on it, but it's always like very few things. And especially after the pandemic, significantly less things are being posted on Craigslist now.
Yeah.
There's less fun. But I think like like when you go on Craigslist and you look at things or gigs and jobs and stuff, it just feels like each one is like a different portal to like a different world, right? Like, everyone lives in a different life, like sees things completely differently. And I feel like Craigslist is like a really short way to just immediately jump into something else.
Totally.
And I feel like, and that's in New York though. Again, like if I was somewhere else, like that portal could lead to my death, which is I think what people think of when they think of Craigslist. Like if I click anything, it leads to my imminent death. But in New York, I don't feel that as true. Or at least like because there's so many, my chances are lower of clicking the wrong portal.
Every day in New York is like a different portal, isn't it?
Yeah. And Craigslist, like it reminds me of like the days, and I wasn't really alive. I mean, I was a baby, so I wasn't alive consciously at this time when Web 1.0 was around. But like Craigslist was the original, or like a form of not social media, but kind of in the sense that you're using the internet as a way to meet people in real life. And I think Craigslist is so direct in that, where that social media and like dating apps is not direct in that anymore. Like you stuck in this like limbo of like kind of socializing, not really, because you never meet in person. Whereas Craigslist is like, so you have so little information about what's going on the other end. You just have to do whatever it is. Like there's very little, like you're not like in a text for several days or anything like that. You just more or less do whatever the ad is. And I like that kind of expedited experience having that I think Craigslist gives you. And it also like ties into the whole audacity thing. Like sometimes you can just do things that you're completely not qualified for, or like you're going to meet random places, meet random people, go to random places. And it kind of encourages you to get out in the world and have confidence in multiple situations and have that flexibility of character in spaces. And I think with like upcycling and just starting your own business, you kind of need that skill and openness to like try new things, especially if you're not coming from like a business background or whatever. You want to make sure you try everything and not have fear when you do so. And I think Craigslist is a good exercise in that.
Wow, you could write a love letter about this. They should make you a Craigslist ambassador. That's amazing. No, because I mean, you're right. I haven't heard the C word in forever.
Yeah, exactly. That's how people think of it. The C word. It's like that. It's that dark. It's so dark.
It has like this lore to it. And it was like, but it was the ish. Like I'd say 2013, like our society collectively and randomly becomes obsessed with certain things like Nutella or like narwhals. Yeah, Craigslist was definitely Craigslist definitely had its moment. Yeah. And I feel like it was killed by Facebook. I feel like Mark Zuckerberg killed Craigslist. That's another reason to be upset.
Yeah, or people were killed on Craigslist and that's why Craigslist was killed. There's also that like people have like this really deep fear of what Craigslist like
it's a dark
means.
web, yeah.
Like people have like a really strong like connotations of what Craigslist is. And I think because so many people are so scared of it, the only people that are left are really like sometimes really sweet, naive, not familiar with the internet people. Like they're just boomers and they're just what they say, they mean exactly what they say. They're very short. A lot of people in Craigslist are really like they don't email well. I don't know how to say they don't email well. But it's also like some people I think they seem sus. I'm like, no, they mean exactly what they say and they're very simple. Like that's how I feel about a lot of my Craigslist interactions.
Hey, that's really humbling.
It could be either one. Yeah. It's true.
I feel like Omegle was buried next to Craigslist.
Omegle was a scary one. Yeah. I was there on it for a while. Yes, I've had some good experiences. Sure, it's kind of fun, but it mostly feels dark. In my experience.
You both have really dark energies, don't they?
Yeah.
But it is kind of like you get what you ask for when you get on Craigslist and Omegle, you know what you're getting every time. But you also don't.
I mean, I don't know about that.
You're not going to get what you want.
I don't know if I stand by that. Yeah, let's do that instead.
Yeah. Well, that's fun. Did you ever source materials on Craigslist?
No, I think that shopping on Craigslist is a hard one. I haven't found anything too interesting there. I mostly do the gigs and jobs.
Who's Craig? Is that like the thing Craigslist?
I don't know. I should know this.
Craigslist.
I did want to do a podcast where I like just record it, but it was really hard. I felt like I was exploiting people, or like I didn't actually do it, but I feel like the idea would exploit people. Like I wanted to have each podcast like about a Craigslist ad that I was doing, but then like other people would know that in a way. I don't know. Have you seen Nathan For You? or
Oh,
How to
have
with
I
John
seen
Wilson.
it for you? It's like my favorite show.
It is my favorite show too.
Yeah, Nathan.
I feel like I'd be doing that to people. You know, like that show's like kind of controversial because like you're not sure how in on it they are.
Yeah, I feel like we watch Nathan for You for fun, but Nathan Fielder watches Craigslist for fun. You know, it's like
That's where he casts people.
100%.
I've like, yeah, that's like when you see him typing looking for ads, that's the Craigslist page. I've typed ads looking for Nathan, looking for people. Like I posted.
That is
So like I know he's there. I know his team is there. So I'm like, pick me. That's like where I'm a pick me girl.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant, Melanie Wong. That is so brilliant. Well, that's a great closing thought. Start with costume design, end with Craigslist. We did it. We covered it all, touched all our bases. And I cannot wait to see what comes next out of Meadowland, where dreams come true, where you
Thank
can be a
you.
star. Yeah, really, really excited. So yeah, thanks for coming on today, Mel. Thanks a million for inviting us to dinner and introducing us to the world of costume design and Craigslist and giving us some words of wisdom for fashion students and upcyclers all alike. You are generally really good vibes, a really interesting person with a lot of fabulous experience. So it was a pleasure.
Thank you. You're so easy to talk to.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll have to come by and see a Star Wars burlesque show. Are you guys coming by Southern Florida anytime soon?
Yeah. Southern Florida, I don't think is on our list right now. Yeah, no.
Well, where do I have to go? Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Thanks so much. And till next time, we'll have to get you back on sometime. And yeah, follow the Instagram to see more of Mel. We'll be posting her all week long. I'll tag her tags in the description. I hope you enjoyed chatting and hanging with Mel as much as I did. If you did, feel free to leave a donation as we are a small platform with big plans and could really use support to support the upcycler community. Make sure to share this episode with a friend and follow our socials if you do not already. Like I said, I'll tag them along with Mel's and some fun interactive Q&As for you. Until next time, and happy spring.